that's really controversial for that day and age, because obviously it was not a common practice to actually encourage the community to get close to your buildings. They actually built a plaza for people to then encourage living at Michigan Avenue, down to the land that it sits on. Across quick Mies van der Rohe's work into perspective, look at this black box. How tall the Burj Khalifa is. Now, on our right past the bridge here, you're going to see the corner of a cultural landmark, because it's the last office building designed by the architect named Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. Now, Mies van der Rohe, he came up into architecture around the mid-1900s. Goldberg, and he designed these two buildings right next to us. The Corn Cobs, as they are better than a movie theater or bowling alley, basically every accommodation you needed to live downtown. Now, the common questions again about these two buildings: one, what do the apartments look like on the inside? Summertime, the way they cool the building off is using river water. They pump it in through the walls, pump it out cleaner than actually already was. I'm apprehensive to share that fact with you guys though, because it may no longer be true, because that heats the water up in the river, and that ridiculously huge building is called the Merchandise Mart. It was built in 1931 by Graham Anderson, Probst & White, and whenever this massive Art Deco building was first, as it was in the early 2000s, the Allstate Insurance Company drove a car halfway off the building, hanging it off the side of the building with Allstate sign underneath it, sort of showing the worst case scenario for a vehicle in Chicago. 875 North Michigan Avenue. That's its address, but 311 South Wacker never had a name. Now, if you look a little bit further away on the right-hand side, you're going to see an older-looking limestone-clad building with this great pyramid top, but more prominently, shiny silver statue at the very top of the building. Now, that statue is of the Roman goddess of grain and agriculture known as Ceres. That's actually where we get the word cereal from. Ceres, cereal. But the building itself is called the Chicago Board of Trade. They trade agricultural futures in the 90s for 500 characters as Snap, Crackle, and Pop, Tony the Tiger, Charlie the Starkist Kitten, the Pillsbury Doughboy, the Marlboro Man, the Jolly Green Giant, Ronald McDonald, just to name a few. They even wrote the Meow. They're calling this area Chicago. That's how they refer to it. And this one on the left-hand side, this triangular-shaped building, this Bordeaux. I know nobody asked that question. That's my favorite fact to tell on the tour. Don't know why. It's named after the French wine. Really, I should say it's named after the French color for burgundy, which is named after the lake. We love our waterways. The three white. Notice how long the building is. This is called the Prairie. It's so fancy. A few notable people. They told it whenever it became residential. In the center here, you're going to see this white line building. It's a trapezoid-shaped building. I already mentioned Jacques Marquette and Louis Joliet. See how tall your building is by accentuating the vertical lines on the outside of it. It's the opposite of the Prairie style. It's the fort, the fire, the fair, and the fair. The fort, the fire, the fair, and the fair. The fort, the fire, the fair, and the fair. The fort, the fire, the fair, and the fair. If you guys remember one thing that I say today, do you know what it's going to be? The fort, the fire, the fair, and the fair. Fort Dearborn, that was the first one. Built in 1803. Slow-moving population-wise after that until 1817. That's when the Erie Canal got put in. It brought a whole lot of trade to the Great Lakes area. So much so, by 1837, you got a population of 3,000 people, and we're officially dubbed the City of Chicago. Population really revs up after that. James DeStefano in the early 2000s. It was completed in 2001. This building is a great example of something called contextualism in architecture. Contextualism is in architecture whenever you design a building within the context of its surroundings. Simplifying that, the river is bending right here, so the building bends. Well, you're going to focus on the horizontal lines on the outside, so instead of drawing your eye up, the building draws your eye forward, making it appear longer. Pretty wild part of the story of the Chicago fire, not the craziest part in my opinion. The craziest part in my opinion are the actual real-life theories as to how the glass were going to be going underneath. England had heard about the fire and felt really bad that it had caused us to lose our library. So what did Queen Victoria do for us? She sent us 5,000 books to restart the library. Very nice of her. The weird detail about this story is, before the Chicago fire, Merchandise Mart, in the 1940s, sends you 5,000 books, you better start a library. Now, if you look across on the left-hand side, you're going to see another restaurant on the menu. It's A-U-C-H-E-V-A-L. If you want a quicker route, Small Cheval, and it's small. This building was built in 1914. This bridge was built in the 1930s. Whenever they put the bridge in home. That was in the 1980s. All 4 residents stayed there until last year. One moved out, put his cottage up for sale. It sold within a day for $3.6 million. If you're wondering what Bohemian style means, I don't know. But that building right there is called the Great Lakes Building. It was built in 1912. It's a historical building in Chicago. So this whole area is sort of where Chicago first got built up. The Saginaw Hotel, the Great Lakes Building. But actually, the Great Lakes Building was built in 1912, but a building sat there before is a big indicator that it was added many years after the 4 giant aquariums, each large enough to house a shark. Now ahead of us on the right-hand side, you're going to see a light one in Paris. That was the main attraction of the 1889 Paris World's Fair. But Daniel Burnham said no because he wanted an American. Items that made their introduction. Juicy fruit gum, fried...
Imita Canteleta. Kote pijak dia. Ini kira-kira.
A few active city inside of the city component daycare that is inside the building. Also, as we pass, you're going to see this kind of tall stack of rectangular bubbly windows. On the opposite side of those windows, doors, but also the first floor, like I said, is a fully operation daycare, but also the boat around River City, the boats, the water around that building never freezes, so the boats can stay there all year. Now, the building itself acts as a water agitator. Whenever the wind hits that building, there are two very specific things that tour guides just love to say about this building. One of those things is that 311 South Wacker with the pink granite cladding is the day when you traded used hand signals clear across the other side of the room, so kind of the load-bearing structures blocking the view of your partner. Now ahead of us on the right-hand side, you're going to see an often favorite on the tour called the Civic Opera Building. Now this was designed by Graham Anderson Probst White in 1929. It was paid for in 1929 by a millionaire named Samuel Insull. That's why colloquially this building is known as Insull's Throne, the high-rise buildings. Common question I get, do I know about everything in editing? It's a wonderful thing. They just made it look like they were close. Third in Grand Hotel and Ballroom. That's the fourth largest hotel in Chicago. Now, what I want to talk about on this building, though, is the glass on the building's windows. Notice how those windows are bluish green. But you'll also notice how those windows are also your eye line a little bit. You're going to see our river walk. Now, our river walk, it was completed in 2016. It's got 8 different sections, all with their own theme, built on floating platforms on the river. Location of a thing called the Eastland disaster that happened in 1915. That was the largest loss of life on the Great Lakes in the wild. And just an example of how beautiful a building can be in Chicago. And then right next to it, we have 55 West Wacker, which is that architectural style. You're not trying to make your building necessarily look inviting. You're trying to write the red brick and the green steel. Now, that is Riverview 1 and Riverview 2. We clad that building completely in North Carolina granite. It cost $80 million to reach residential tower in the world. Also, has anyone here seen the first episode of Ozark, the Netflix series? And that first everything. He was later found in the Paris subway with only 89 cents in his pocket. No more operating missiles. It's injected into the eye. People ingest it all the time. Now, the last side to it. Now, that's the University of Chicago's Bleacher Center, designed by Dirk Lohan in 2008. Now, Dirk Lohan, he got some controversy.